Okay.
My father was a man named Charles Chuck Frost. Charles Henry Frost. He was born in 1936. He was born in Medford, Oregon, and he lived his first 6 years in a little log cabin. This is my grandparents, Hazel Emma Stevens. I'm a Stephen with a PH because I was named after her maiden name. And Wilfred Tuttle Frost. This is the log cabin at a place called Annie Spring in Crater Lake National Park. So my father grew up the son of a park ranger. And he truly knew what it was like to grow up remote, because let's face it, Crater Lake National Park gets pretty snowed in, and you're kind of there with the half a dozen other staff for the huge area, and the bears and the birds and the other guys. Grandma was an art student. Grandpa worked for both the Park Service and the Forest Service. And then they moved to Medford, went to school there. Dad went to Medford High, and he was gifted. He was a silver-tongued devil, if you will. They moved to Portland, and Dad went to Grant High School, and much to the chagrin of his classmates, out of nowhere became the student body president.
Oh, really?
And everybody that was running against him was like, who is this guy? He just come out of nowhere and take over the school, but he did, and he used to brag some of his slogans that got him the election. He was a politician. He ended up going to college, sorta, and I think Bologna University, and then he joined the Army, and they moved him into the basement of the Pentagon, where he worked on the big computer system, you know, one of the biggest computer systems on the planet at that time, and he worked there in high tech for the Army. Let's see, his father, Grandpa Frost, sung in the Methodist choir, and they had a Sony tape machine, reel-to-reel tape machine, very 60s, and he played classical music and choral music through the speakers in his house, and that's what we listened to when we were at Grandma and Grandpa's house. There in D.C., in the basement of the Pentagon, while he was doing his thing, he met a gal named Marilyn Jean Heckman, my mother. In 1934, she was born. And I want us to notice this porch here, because this porch plays a little later after she has kids. I mean, it played for them in all kinds of ways. But this is my mom, little human Cubie doll. and I don't know the dog's name, sorry. She grew up, she went to school in a place called Oysterville, Indiana. And it's basically the southwesternmost tip of Indiana, the tri-state area they call it, in a place called Posey County. And very, very small town. Her dad, my grandpa, George Heckman, was the postmaster in Wadesville. I have fond memories of him letting me sort mail, you know, little kid sorting letters. And Mom, after she graduated from high school, she got a job at the bank. Mom used to sing Baptist hymns at church, and she learned to play piano there. And yeah, so she flew the coop. She didn't want to, I mean literally, she didn't want to hang in Wadesville too much longer, so she got a gig with an airline. She took some training. She moved to Washington, D.C., which happens to be where the Pentagon is, and for those who didn't know. And she became what they called back then a stewardess. We can't use that expression anymore for reasons uncertain, but she was pre-flight attendant. This is my mom, and bless her heart. And I miss my parents. And one of the beautiful things about going through this process, putting together this presentation, is I really get to hang with these people again. And you know, Fred's nodding his head because he knows what I'm talking about. So the two of them met. They fell in love. They got married. This is the only color wedding photo. It was a small ceremony in D.C. And and they had a baby. That's me. And they moved back to Portland. And Dad immediately took a job with a company called Tektronix. He started off as a human resources guy, ended up becoming the director of public affairs, a PR guy, and eventually became vice president of administration for Tektronix. Tektronix at this time was the largest employer, civilian employer in the state of Oregon. That was until Intel took that role. Real quick backstory, my dad, as a lobbyist, was very responsible for having talked to the governor of Oregon, I believe it was Vic Atiyeh at the time, into changing taxation to where it was actually attractive for high-tech companies to move in to what is now called the Silicon Forest. So companies moved from Silicon Valley to what is now the Silicon Forest. Intel now has close to 20,000 employees in Hillsboro, and that's largely because of the work Dad did for Tektronix, lobbying for that. And I spent 18 years working at Intel, so kind of funny how things work out. So Dad's working there, and somewhere along the way, and I can't quite figure out when, whether it was in the 40s or the 50s, Dad learned to play guitar. And this is a picture, where we talked about family, this is a picture, every 2 years, my family does a family reunion, and it's now almost 120 people gather, usually in Northern California. This is one such gathering. I think this picture, I think I was in the 5th grade here. And Dad, he actually had some chops. He was never a musician per se, but he was quite happy to break out a guitar. And we're talking about songs that we learned. Some of the things I thought, he used to sing Skip to My Lou, right? Down in the Valley, very sorrowful song. This Land Is Your Land, Woody Guthrie. That song actually is going to play a little later down the road here. Frere Jacques, Row Your Boat, which I love the punchline on that song. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream, right? That one just gets me for some reason. There's a song called Music Alone Shall Live. And I remember when Dad taught us that song, he taught us to sing in a round with 2 of the family members singing this part and the other, and it was magical. Red River Valley, 500 Miles. Virgin Mary Had a Little Baby. He would break that one out at Christmas time. There's a Hole in the Bucket, right? And he did this one, and this song. So for the record, this was the very guitar that my dad used to play. This hung on the wall like an icon. You know, I mean, I'm 0 years old looking at this guitar hanging on the wall, and every now and then he pulls it down and knocks out a song. This is one that he sang, and I like this because it was fun for kids. And the finger stuff that I'm doing here, it's actually Fred will tell you, Chuck will tell you, Bill will tell you that there's actually a little bit of technique involved here, and it would take me years to figure out that my dad actually had some technique. So it was songs like this. Well, the fox went out one chilly night, played for the Lord to give him light. Many a mile to go that night before he reached the town-o, town-o, town-o. Many a mile to go that night before he reached the town-o. We'll do one more. He ran till he came to the farmer's den. Ducks and the geese were kept there, and he said, a couple of you gonna grease my chin before I leave this town-o, town-o, town-o. A couple of you gonna grease my chin before I reach this town-o. So it was fun, it was nonsensical, and it was violent because there was like dead animals all over the place. And as a child, this stuff kind of sticks to you. So that one was hard to forget. So there's Dad playing and singing. The musical backdrop, anybody from Portland? So there was a station back in the 60s, it's probably still around, different format now, called KEX. And they were sort of the middle of the road station, and that's what I was doused in. There was music coming from multiple places, but it was largely KEX, the radio in the kitchen, playing stuff. Let's see. Yeah, so for my 3rd birthday, I got my first instrument of sorts. I mean, it's actually a toy. So I looked it up. Unlike Fred's, one of the first 80-some guitars that Leo Fender ever made, this is a plastic ukulele that I found I could buy right now on Etsy, the same late 50s model, for $20, which is exciting. I'm not going to buy it though. Yeah, so this is my first promo shot ever, and we moved to a place in suburban Portland, a place called Garden Home, and I grew up there and went to school there. Records were played on my dad's hi-fi, and Dad was kind of a hardware snob. He had a really nice tube amplifier with this beautiful one speaker that had gorgeous sound, and I wanted to figure out how did this music come about? What were the diversities that so I looked at the record collection, right? And I'm looking retrospectively because most of that record collection now lives at my daughter's house, a daughter named Athena, who inherited all of the vinyl. And Mom, she had a lot of show tunes. She had a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein. She had Carousel and My Fair Lady, The King and I. So and then she had a bunch of sort of 50s pop Sinatra-y, Doris Day kind of stuff. I think some Nat King Cole. She had one Bob Newhart record that I used to love to play. And Dad, on the other hand, he was kind of coming. He had some blues. He had some Lead Belly and some Odetta. He had a bunch of jazz. He had and a lot of folk stuff. The Weavers. He had the Kingston Trio. The Weavers, by the way, one of their prime characters was Pete Seeger. And Dad was actually listening to a fair amount of kind of union song, protest music. Bob Dylan was just kind of coming in, and so as their record collection grew after they came together, we were seeing Cat Stevens albums come in. We were seeing Simon Garfunkel, Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Judy Collins, Hoyt Axton, Melanie, The Grateful Dead, which is a story in itself. Mom heard a song one day on the radio called Ripple. Beautiful song off an album called American Beauty. So Dad went out and bought her a Grateful Dead album, and it was right there in our home, and that was my friends and neighbors thought that was pretty cool that my parents were hip enough to be listening to the Grateful Dead. And it was just because Mom had this charming affinity for this song. So anyway, her records, his records come together, more records, and this is the stuff we're listening to. And of course, by this time, Dad had graduated to stereo and got what I recall was not that impressive of a stereo, but it was what we had, and it was marvelous. So I'm going to quote here a guy named Dr. Hauk Egerman, a music researcher with the music department of England's University of York, also serves as director of the York Music Psychology Group, says, hearing new types of music has positive effects on youngsters that go beyond simply humming or singing along. Quote, the benefits of having a wider taste in music include the ability to use music to manage their emotions, to socialize, and bond with others more easily, as well as to have a better understanding of other cultures. Makes sense, right? There's also a thing that they found, and that is children tend to relate to other kids who know the same songs that they do. And they actually tend to dissociate with kids who don't know their songs. And that's kind of interesting. So kind of the broader background we give our kids musically, the better set they are up to go out there and diversify. So parents allowing diverse and favorite music to be in the background for extended periods will naturally be more likely to have a easier socialized kid. I don't know what went wrong with me. Another thing too, parents talking to their kids. So as kids get older, of course, they start to branch out and listen to their own music. And I think we all remember when that kind of happened. And relating to our kids' tastes in music sometimes is challenging. I mean, I was listening to rock and roll, and my parents wanted nothing to do with that, particularly. I mean, they weren't totally averse to it, but it was not something we shared. Of course, some parents don't want to listen to the rap music that their kids are listening to, but there's actually value in going to our kids and saying, what is it you love about this? Tell me, why does this move you? Because, again, if we're going under the premise that we're all one, let's share what we love with each other. So moving on, about the age of 5, around kindergarten, my Uncle Arthur, my mom's youngest brother, returned from Vietnam. And he came back with a duffel bag, a guitar, and stories, and a bunch of songs that he'd written. And I'm this tall, or whatever tall you are at that point, and here comes this guy back from the war singing songs that he had written. And he had a guitar, not entirely. Actually, he may not have had a guitar. He might have been borrowing Dad's. And he shared some pretty amazing songs. And it really got to me. Here's an uncle who's writing and singing songs. It's like, wow. And I really kind of looked up to him in a big, big way. It really changed me. So, the first real instrument that I ever got was, age 6, 7, was a ukulele. It was not this one. Ukulele is the correct pronunciation. And the first song I ever learned, 3 chords, and this is a nice instrument because you don't have too many strings, was this song. As I walk down the streets of Laredo, as I walk down in Laredo one day, I spied a young cowboy wrapped up in white linen, wrapped up in white linen, as cold as the clay. I'm going to do one more verse. I see by your outfit that you are a cowboy. These words he did say as I slowly walked by. Anybody remember the next line? The punchline was, I got shot in the breast. I got shot in the breast and I know I must die. That's the first song I learned. Shot in the breast and I know I must die. So already I'm kind of developing a sort of a melancholic affinity with music. That's the only time we're breaking out the ukulele today. But that's what started me playing and singing. And let's see. So a guy from Rowan University, a gal, Lily Levenowitz, the co-founder of Music Together and professor of music education at Rowan University in New Jersey, says, quote, to get the full benefits of music, children need to sing, clap, and dance along with the tunes. Singing and moving to music tells the brain to make meaning of it, a cognitive process called audiation. Okay? So, audiation, I've never heard this word before. So here's my dad again. This is actually at his parents' house in Portland, Oregon, playing this guitar. And so my dad used to have my sister and I dance around like rag dolls, just like little spazzes, little grade school spazzes, to this song. And he would stop it in the middle, and our job was to freeze and then the guitar start. And we're like, okay, when's it going to start? And then he'd start again. And it was this. We'd be flopping around. So we would actually be moving this stuff. It's the only time I really remember dancing in the living room as a little kid. And that was a song. I would find out years later that he borrowed that from a Bob Dylan album. The album was called Nashville Skyline. And the song is called the Nashville Skyline Rag. And literally, decades later, I would play that album and go, oh my goodness, that's that song I used to flop around in the living room to. So Dad's still playing and singing at this point. He gave it up about the time I started getting good as a musician. Good's a relative term, but I think at some point he shelved it, which to this day sort of breaks my heart. Even up until he died, I would come along every few years and restring his guitar and say, Dad, play again. He'd say, no. And yeah, so to touch on a shadowy part, there was hardship in our family. And in retrospect, I think my dad felt like he was maybe robbed of his freedom a little bit when he went and got married and moved back. And I think he had a wild hair that never quite got realized. And I think it made him angry. And bless his heart. And so he would drink a lot. And sometimes he would pine over these songs about being out on the highway, and he had this sort of angst that he expressed in his music. He'd sit there with a glass of bourbon in his hand, and then another glass of bourbon, and play the same song over and over on the hi-fi or on the stereo at this point. And he would get mad. And the truth is, I was sort of the target of a lot of his anger. And that'll kind of mess you up as a kid. So this is one of the reasons that this sitting here is kind of difficult for me, because this is me in the first grade. And if you look at this kid, so as trustee of my parents' estate, my mother died 2 years ago this month. And my job is to go through all the stuff and figure out what to do with all the stuff. And I found my old report cards, right? And I found my first grade teacher's handwriting on my first grade report card. She said, amongst things, she said, Steve tends to over-socialize, and he would do much better if he focused, and all that stuff that you get on your report card. But it said, Steve, this killed me. Steve seems unhappy. I wonder why. She wrote that and sent that home. And so here I am now, a year ago reading this going, oh my goodness, that was a clue. And she actually took that clue and wrapped it up with a little bow and sent it home for my parents. And of course I never heard about it. I never even knew this. But it plays. And there's something about that guy's angst and Streets of Laredo and all the other stuff that a kid goes through that was critical to who I would become. So, while the parents were getting a lot of things right, just like all of us, we got some things wrong too. And my parents, the bottom line was I was looking for approval, right? And I wasn't quite feeling it. This would play later when you realize what it's like to be a musician and a narcissist seeking approval. You sit up here in front of a room and you kind of just, everybody just like me, please. So anyway, ages 8 through 10, Mom and Dad gifted me my own AM/FM radio. Now something cool happens here, because now I take the music into the privacy of my bedroom as a kid, and I get to listen to KISN and KGW radio, and they were playing Paul Revere and the Raiders and the Beatles, and suddenly I'm going, hey, this is pretty cool. And of course, so the paths start to branch there a little bit between parents' taste and the kids' taste. And I'm empowered now to become impassioned by new and exciting things that I hadn't heard before. You know, and there were cultural things going on too. This is the time with you know, civil rights movements and Vietnam and, you know, Kent State, you know, hippies and long hair and rock and roll. And this was, and as a grade school kid, this is the ambient temperature that I'm being formed in. My sister Laura got, for Christmas one year, got a little portable phonograph. And we were given grab bags of cheap 45s that they couldn't sell otherwise. They might even use 45s. And we would sit there and play these records. And so we're finding our musical independence. First guitar about this time, probably 9, 10 years old, I got a guitar. And it was probably a $15 guitar, kind of a toy guitar. But I was going to play it, and I did. And the fingering here translates to guitar. You just have to figure out what to do with a couple of extra strings. And so it's like, and I did. I eventually figured out, oh, I need to put more fingers on there. And so I learned some of this stuff. Yeah, so back to Mom. Mom, as she got married, had to hang up being a stewardess for the airlines. But when she moved back to Portland, she got a counter job with United Airlines, selling tickets at PDX, at Portland International Airport, which meant she got benefits, which meant we could fly around. And if we didn't mind flying standby, right, we got to go places. And once a year, the parents were quite happy to ship us off to Indiana so that they could go do whatever they wanted. They get a break from us for a couple of weeks, and we'd go to Indiana. So you remember that porch that was in that first little picture of Mama the Cupid doll? Well, these are Mama's siblings. This is my mom, her brother Ty, who was in the theater and sang like a bird. Brother George, who she said sang really, really well. I don't think I ever heard him sing. Her little big sister Leanna. This is Uncle Art, who came back from Vietnam, and her brother David. And I have the fondest memories of the summers in Indiana with those siblings on the porch singing beautiful harmonies, right? With the you know, they're drinking beer and the lightning bugs are spinning around and they're doing these beautiful harmonies. This is one of the songs that to this day when they get together, the only surviving members right now are Leanna, David, and Arthur, and these three Sibs are gone. Rest in peace. But this is a song that they used to sing, and the last few times that we got together, they still sang harmonies on this, and to this day, this is in my set list. Was it cloud so swift, the rain won't lift? If you know the chorus, sing along with me. Gate won't close in the rain and froze. Get your mind off winter time, 'cause you ain't going nowhere. And here's the chorus. Ooh, ride me high. Tomorrow's the day my ride's gonna come. Oh Lord, we're gonna fly down in my easy chair. Yeah, so when I hear your voices come in, it reminds me of the one voice that we're the Heckman family, and it moves me because they clearly were feeling it. And as a kid, they let me tag along there on the porch. Eventually, I ended up bringing a guitar and strumming along and trying to sing these songs that I didn't really know. But music, the family, oh my goodness. Oh, and Red, the hound dog, he'd sit out there on the porch. Eventually, after years, he only had one eye because he got hit by a car, but he'd still sing along. I mean, You know, them singing, ooh, wee, and him saying, oh. So around age 11, 12, my sister and I would get allowance, and I chose to spend my allowance down at the record store. And I'd go and get a list of the top 100, Billboard's top 100, and I'd go through and I'd buy a couple of 45s, and I'd take them home and I'd play them. And I'd play them, and I'd play them, and over and over and over. My poor parents would have to listen to the same songs over and over. And how many people did that? How many people went and bought records and just played the heck out of them? Good. So that's a fun place to process feelings as a kid, because we resonate. I got my first guitar, real guitar. Dad went out and picked a Yamaha FG 140, and it raised the bar on my ability to play, because it was a real instrument. It actually had tone and didn't hurt your fingers when you played it. And Dad bought Mom and Laura a piano, and the piano went into the home, and Laura took piano lessons, and Mom would get out her hymn books and go back into her Baptist hymns and sing them out, and certain songs Mom and Dad would sing harmonies on, and it was nice. Going into my teenage years,